Girls, I know I've been away for what feels like the whole summer, but when I tell you why, it's all going to make complete sense. I'm engaged. I have so much to fill you guys in on, so many lessons that I've learned along the way, so many tips, so many tricks, so many things I want to share with you. And honestly, I've been so excited to get back to YouTube and to share this exciting news with you girls. So if you are looking to get engaged in the future, or you just want to be nosy a little bit like me and find out about how I got engaged, where I got engaged, my story, and the tips and lessons along the way, then stick around because it's all coming up right now. Hi, welcome back to the Vibration Vault. My name is Alia Saray. I help women all over the world navigate their love life in a more feminine way. So if that sounds like something that you want to do, make sure to subscribe to stick around. Okay, let's begin. So my partner is the first partner that I've ever introduced to my family. Have I had another previous long-term relationship? Yes. However, he never got introduced to my parents. And it's because of this one really important lesson. And it's something I really wanted to share with you girls. My parents, or my dad particularly, has always been very old-fashioned, very traditional. And he's always taught my sisters and I that we are only to bring somebody home if we are looking to actually get married to them. So all my life, I have thought this is so unfair, probably what you're thinking. Growing up, all of my friends would be allowed to have their boyfriends over, stay out with their boyfriends, have their boyfriends over, family dinners, family meals. But yet, somehow, I always respected my dad's wishes, and I never ever pushed the boundary. But it did affect me later on in my dating life. I thought it was a negative effect it would have on my dating life, but now looking back, it was actually a really positive effect it had on my dating life. So now, when I've been dating in my relationships that I've had, I have had to have such a strict criteria, because one thing I do not play about is my life, because I know I'm not going to mess around with a guy or just date a guy to have a boyfriend if there's no intention of marriage, because what is the point? I can't bring you home to my parents. I can't bring you to a family dinner. And what's deemed in the West to be very normal, to introduce parents and families, go on family trips and holidays with your partner, just wasn't very normal for me. So I didn't want to get too highly involved. So now subconsciously, with men that I've dated, or let's say in my previous relationship, with this guy I've dated previously, who was a very good man, I had such high standards and high criterias that he needed to meet and adhere to, and all of these hoops he had to jump through in order for him to earn a seat at the table with my parents. Now, this is something that you can also learn from and implement too. So even if you don't have traditional parents, to a point where you are allowed to bring home any boyfriend, you can now change that story and change that narrative and now start to implement this with them. No, actually, meeting my friends is a privilege. You know, until I am certain of you, until I am sure of you, then you can meet my friends. Or with family members, it's you only can earn a seat at the table with my family once you meet this criteria. And I found this worked very well with my fiance. That's so funny and interesting and lovely to say, but that's how I feel with my partner now. Because when I was getting to know him, he knew that it had to be on the basis of intention of marriage. Now, he was raised very similar to me. And if you've watched my previous episodes, it was my journaling episode, I told you guys how we met. My fiance is actually friends with my dad, and that's how we met. I met when I was visiting home from London to my parents' house, and I met him in my living room. That's how we met. And he also knew that it had to be on the basis of intention of marriage. So both of us together have been working towards that. Now, my partner knew I was never going to introduce him to my dad or my mum as my future husband on the basis that he didn't meet the criteria I wanted him to meet. Now, this is another lesson. If you do not know what you want and what your standard is going into a relationship, please don't get into one. You need to know what your standards are. What is your vision for the relationship? Now, you can take your journal out and really think about this. If, as a woman, you don't know how you want to be led, then you will not know the direction that the relationship will take you in, which means you will lose your voice in the relationship. One thing I got crystal clear before I got with my partner was that I had a clear vision for what I wanted the relationship to look like, what I wanted the finances to look like, what I wanted him to look like, how I wanted him to engage with others around me, behind my back, to my face, how I wanted him to treat his family, treat my family, etc. As a woman in your feminine energy, sometimes you are tricked into thinking to let the man lead, but this is just not true. A woman in her feminine energy shows a man how she wants to be led. So actually, it's you showing a man how you want to be led. How can you show a man how you want to be led if you don't have a clear vision of what that looks like to you? So the reason why I have been away for so long is at the beginning of summer, which is kind of when I went MIA, at the beginning of summer, I agreed to introduce my partner to my parents in the capacity of him being my husband. Now, yes, it was a bit easier because they obviously already know him and already love him, because my dad was a mentor to him in business. That was the connection, that was the relationship that they had before. So it was a lot easier because my dad knows he's from a very well-to-do family and he would look after me, protect me, provide for me. He's been raised very well. So then we went on lots of trips together, my partner and I. We went to Saint-Tropez, then we went to Santorini. When we went to Saint-Tropez, I was 100% certain he was going to propose to me. We went in a big group of friends, but it didn't happen. Next, he took me to Santorini and I was thinking, if it doesn't happen here, then honestly, I don't know. It did happen in Santorini though. It was beautiful. If I can find some pictures and things, I'll insert it here. If not, or if you already follow me on Instagram, you'll have already seen the engagement. It was so beautiful, so special. And just a moment for the ring. It's so beautiful. Honestly, this is not the end goal though. The ring is just the beginning. A lot of women get it twisted. They think that getting the ring is the end. Like you've achieved everything that you want to achieve. It's not true, okay? It starts at marriage. Life starts at marriage. That's what I believe. Anyway, back to my point. So throughout the whole summer, I've known that I was getting proposed to because I introduced my partner to my parents on the basis that this is the man I want to marry. And my partner asked for my hand in marriage from my father and my mother, which thank God went swimmingly, and they love him so much. Now, another lesson that you can learn from my experience and so many other women's experience is that you cannot settle down and find a man to marry and be in a relationship with that's going to be a long-lasting marriage and a happy marriage unless you have gone out into the big bad wide world and lived a fruitful independent life. Now, when I was with my ex-partner, he was the sole provider and he was a very good man. I don't actually have any notes on him. He wasn't horrible or toxic or malicious whatsoever. Now, the reason I ended things with him is because I knew I needed to go off independently and create a life that he was giving me for myself. And that's a really important lesson, because when you go off and you create financial freedom or even just financial security for yourself, it gives you a lot of confidence in yourself, your own self-worth, what you can achieve, what you believe you are worthy of, what you believe you are deserving of. And when you have that validation that, oh my gosh, I can actually take care of myself, and you don't want for anything. What I mean by this is you get to a stage where you can pay your own rent, you can pay for your own trips, your own bills, and you don't need a man, or you don't need to trick a man into paying for your hair or nails, just the basic life necessities, and you can take care of yourself. Then, and only then, is when you're actually able to attract a man who is willing to provide and go all in on you. And that's because your perception of a man is not warped. You don't need a man now for anything. So you're not going to settle with Jimmy from down the street because you can move in with him and he will pay all the rent. Now your standards are going to be much higher than that. Now you don't need your rent paid. Now he has to do much more for you to impress you. Now, if you couple that lesson with the lesson I taught you earlier about having standards around who's allowed to sit at the table with your closest people, that's what's going to make a man work for you. Now, a high-value man wants to be challenged. He wants something to work for. So if you don't give a man, a high-value man, something to constantly challenge him and something to constantly work for, then he's going to get bored of you. So if you give everything up on a plate, women think about that, and they think about giving everything up on a plate as giving everything up just in a sexual context. But that's not true. Giving him access to your friends, giving him access to your family, giving him access to your peace, your life, your finances, all of these things, and of course your body. But the lesson is, the more you challenge him, the more he will respect you and the more he will love you. Another frequent question that I get asked is, how do you know that he's the one? How do you know that the guy you're dating right now is the one? You should know from the very first minute. He should know from the very first minute. I actually used to get really frustrated when I heard people say this, like, oh, when you know, you know. I thought, what does that even mean? Okay, but now that I have lived it and I've experienced it, I can genuinely vouch, hand on heart, you know. I could have confidently married my partner the first day I met him. The first day I spent solo, one-on-one with him, I knew I was going to marry him. In fact, I told all of my friends, I'm going to marry this guy. I was like, I'm going to marry him. And he told all of his friends that he's going to marry me. You just know. The reason why I held off not marrying him on the first day or within the first few weeks is because it shows self-respect and it shows that you are taking yourself very seriously. Everything can look very rosy on the outset, okay? However, you need to give it time to see what this person is like. Personally, I waited 3 years. I waited 3 years before I actually allowed myself to say yes to forever with this man. And that's because I respect myself more. I gave him obstacles and hoops to jump through, and there's tests that come along the way, tests that are not manufactured by ourselves, but tests that are manufactured by God or the universe, naturally, that happen and evolve. Remember, a man is not going to value anything as much that he's not had to work hard for. So even when you do find that person and you're like, I know, I found it, Alia, I found the guy. When you know, give it some time, okay? Let the dust settle, because we've all been there, where you think you know, okay? You might think you know, but you don't really know. A lot of women find a really good guy before they find the guy, okay? Similar to my ex in my previous relationship. You find a really good guy that, like, listen, I have no notes for him. He was a great guy, but he wasn't my guy. So that can be confusing. That's why I say give it time. Give it the 2 years, give it the 3 years to see him in different social situations. Let him see if he's going to step up and be there for you. You need to be able to see his argument style. You need to see how quickly he can get back to baseline. You need to see if he respects your boundaries. You need to see if he can live up to your standards. You need to see if he is elevating your lifestyle. You need to see if your lifestyle is even aligned. Another really important lesson that I learned leading up to my engagement with my partner, and just even in the dating phase with my relationship with my partner, is that I see a lot of women settle down and get into relationships with men that like them. So they treat you really well. They are interested in you. They are giving you attention. But if it was up to you, you wouldn't have necessarily picked them out of a lineup. So they're not your type to a T. You wouldn't have really picked them. The reason why you chose them is because they were really nice to you. They want you. This is not feminine energy. A woman in her feminine energy knows that she is the one that chooses and then steps back and allows him to chase her. The reason that this is so important and such an important lesson for you to carry, if you feel like maybe you are in this situation right now with you not being 100% fully attracted to your partner, or maybe he chose you and you didn't get a chance to choose him. The reason why that is so important is because over a period of time, you start to lose your voice and your free will in your reality. You are the only person in your version of reality that should have free will. Now, what happens when a man chooses you and you don't really choose him is you lose your free will in your own reality, which has a domino effect in every single other area of the relationship that you'll create with him. You'll start to lose your voice, you'll start to lose your opinion, you'll start to lose your identity. To avoid this happening, you really need a strong sense of identity. As a woman in her feminine energy, like you have to have the power to say no to things that temporarily will give you this illusion of love, safety, and security. That means at the time, even if desperately all you really want is this love from this guy, that he's showing you all of this affection and all of this love and attention, that's only temporarily going to fill that void. A woman in her feminine energy has the strength to say, hold up, no, I'm not doing that. As a woman, like you, in your feminine energy, you need to accept that you are going to get a catalog of men interested in you, okay? It's up to you to pick and choose by process of elimination who you want to pursue and who you want to put on the bench. Not every single guy who is nice to you, gifts you things, treats you well, speaks well to you, that doesn't mean he's your dream guy. We need higher levels of standards, morals, values, cultural similarities, how you've been raised, lifestyle. We need to see if other things are meshing, not just a guy that's going to treat you well. When you start to realize that you are the exception to the rule and that every single man will treat you well, you will start to look at more intricate standards for yourself. You will start to say that I don't care if he sent me 1 million roses to my house. This is just not the standard. That is the bare minimum. When you start to realize that you are the exception to the rule, that all men actually treat you very well. All men would want to marry you. All men want to date you. All men want to treat you like a princess. All men will talk to you nicely. All men will respect your wishes. When you start to realize you are the exception to that rule, your standards get a lot more niche, and that's when you start to find the creme de la creme and the high value man. I was really excited to share something a little bit more personal about the lead up to my engagement and the lessons that I've learned along the way. If you are looking to get engaged, or maybe you find yourself in a few of the similar positions that I had found myself in, remember that we're all on our own path, we're all on our own timeline, and that this video and this episode found you for a reason. You watched this episode for a reason. Maybe there's a lesson somewhere you can take and implement into your own life. So that is a wrap for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to leave me a comment, leave me a like, make sure to subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the other episodes. Mwah! I love you. Bye.